The president is also placing an emphasis on reducing the deficit, which is the gap between what the nation spends and what it takes in. This is in order to blunt Republican criticism that the $1.9 trillion relief package has left the U.S. economy worse off. Strong job gains over the past 16 months have increased total incomes and led to additional tax revenues. That means that this fiscal year's budget deficit will decline $1.5 trillion, much better than the $1.3 trillion that was initially forecasted. Folks, we have a ton of good news about the fourth stimulus check, Social Security benefits, SSI, and SSDI. Continue watching this video because you definitely don't want to miss out on this. President Biden is signing a new executive order, and the Biden administration has released a new announcement regarding stimulus checks. The top Democrats are pushing for the fourth stimulus package to be passed soon, so we have a ton of good news on this. Federal and state legislation to send rebates or stimulus checks directly to Americans have been introduced. Top Democrats are pushing for immediate action to be help the American people. And U.S. Representatives Mike Thompson and Lauren Underwood have introduced the Gas Rebate Act of 2022, which would send monthly payments of $100 to Americans where the average gas price is higher than $4 per gallon. The program will begin to phase out for individuals earning more than $75,000 and couples earning more than $150,000, and phase out entirely for individuals with an income of more than $80,000 and couples earning more than $160,000 per year. In a statement announcing the proposed legislation, Thompson called it a common-sense policy solution to the financial burden that constituents are feeling. But not everyone agrees that a tax rebate limit the impact of high gas prices on the economy. Federal policy analysts have told CNN that tax rebates may not solve the problem of post-crisis supply chain constraints. State-by-state tax gas price variations reflect several factors, including local gas taxes and regulations. Oklahoma, for example, gas prices remained among the lowest in the country because they have relatively low taxes. And Connecticut is one of 3 states to pass a bill eliminating state gasoline taxes to offset increasing costs for consumers. The suspension will be in effect, and lawmakers hope that the move will provide some relief to consumers as they face rising prices due to a number of international dynamics. In addition to the tax break, the state has also eliminated some public buses statewide during the same period. Now, state attorney generals have joined the fight for broad student loan forgiveness, and this week, Attorney General from New York, Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, and New Mexico wrote a letter to President Biden urging him to cancel federal student debt for each and every borrower. The attorneys said in a statement that they have seen the burden of student debt and what it can have for borrowers who fall behind in the payments. This includes wage garnishment and seizure of federal benefits, which President Biden said can ensure permanent relief by forgiving that debt. They stated restarting federal student loan payments rather than permanently forgiving them will only make matters worse. Now is not the only time for half measures, extensions, or patchwork solutions. Now is the time for decisive action. State attorney generals have previously fought for protections for student loan borrowers. Earlier this year, 39 of them reached a $1.85 billion settlement with major student loan companies. And now with Biden saying he will make a decision on student loan relief in the coming weeks, they're joining Democrats in Congress for pushing for broad relief for every federal borrower. Do you think that this is a good decision, folks? Tell me in the comments. Now, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez told the Washington Post, "I don't believe in a cutoff, especially for so many of the frontline workers who are drowning in debt and would like to be excluded from relief." Recently released data from Elizabeth Warren's office found that while every amount of forgiveness will make a difference, the more the better.
One of the anniversary celebration and one of the chief architects of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Tom Harkin, he talks about it here, and that's appropriate. He talks about it everywhere. He's one of these champions for people he talks about his brother. That was your original motivation, I think. And we've had the pleasure of welcoming him to California on time and time again. And this is always his why, his purpose. So how appropriate today that you've taken such a lead in this statue of Franklin Roosevelt in the wheelchair. Thank you, Tom Harkin, for being so wonderful. And Mary Dolan, thank you, Executive Director, thank you for your leadership and your very strong remarks. And thank you for acknowledging Elena Berger and so many others who we owe a great debt of gratitude. How about how wonderful it is to see Ambassador Pierce. She talked about the memorial to Franklin Roosevelt in the UK, and we take great pride in the statue that we have of Winston Churchill in the Capitol, right at the foot of the stairs that the British used to storm the Capitol in 1812. But our reconciliation is part of our history. It's part of our history. That was meant as a compliment. I mean, sometimes I have to interpret, I don't know. And again, James Roosevelt. Yes, it is in the DNA, not just the form of your shoulders, but in your leadership. And I, as you know, I have seen it firsthand for decades. And now another generation of my family sees your leadership, whether it's, again, our values, our priorities in terms of issues, or the politics to get the job done. Thank you, James. It's always wonderful. We've been friends for decades, although he's much younger. And how nice that Tracy is here. How proud you must be, your great-grandfather, your father. Now, let me just talk about this in a personal way. You know, as I said, there's a lot we can all say about the 4 freedoms and the rest. It's a lifetime of service and leadership, and for us to take pride in it. But I take a little pride because I remember fondly being here for the dedication in 1997. I did hear Senator Inouye speak those beautiful words. I was a member of the Appropriations at the time. I did serve with Claude Pepper, as my father served with him too in Congress many years before. But I have to mention another person, Sid Yates. Sid Yates, he was the chair of the Appropriations Committee while much of this was going on of Illinois, and he was my chairman there, and he, again, shared so many of Franklin Roosevelt's values, a true progressive. And I also want, so let me say this. I brought my brother Tommy, who was...
And that is Joe Manchin. I know many of you were disappointed when Manchin came out in opposition to the package, but some Democrats are urging the Senate to pass a chunk of the bill before others. A group of lawmakers want to advance the $555 billion portion of the package focused on combating the climate crisis. But this section is different than others because it is a section of the bill that Manchin previously said he could support. A representative of New Jersey said that climate change simply should not be a partisan issue, and it is just something that we must do. Now, Joe Biden has already said he believed the Democratic Party could agree to the climate section of the plan, largely made up of tax credits designed to ease the transition to cleaner energy sources. The good news is that Manchin appears interested in working with Senator Susan Collins of Maine and a group of over a dozen senators on a bipartisan election reform deal. Joe Manchin told Insider, "We can work on everything, but election reform is a thing. We want to make sure we get done quickly." Manchin added that future negotiations on the centerpiece of Biden's agenda will be starting from scratch. Momentum is also building on Congress for more stimulus relief, funding to support low-income Americans, restaurants, and other businesses